Assemblywoman, on both that question and as somebody from the audience observes, you didn't answer the question specifically on personal gun ownership. Do you own firearms?
I do not own firearms.
And your thoughts on this clash of rights and the question of who fears who and why?
Well, I think that the most important self-defense tool that any of us have is our brain. And our ability to recognize a potentially dangerous situation, our ability to respond appropriately. And again, what we tell children is if you see a gun, report it to the nearest adult. And so when we see people carrying guns in public, I think there are many people of all ages that think the responsible thing to do is report that to a responsible adult, to law enforcement. So going back to my initial premise, this is putting a burden on law enforcement at a time when our resources are stretched to the limit. And I would love to think that everyone displaying a gun is doing so legally, responsibly, with training, but currently, under the current situation, we have no way to verify that.
Unfortunately, we've reached the point in our program where we would like to have some very brief closing statements. Excuse me. Starting with the Assemblywoman, what have you heard from Governor Schwarzenegger's office about what he might do if this reaches his desk?
Well, the governor is very responsive to law enforcement. I mentioned we have law enforcement from throughout California that are supporting this bill. We are continuing with the legislative hearings, and I think he will be open to signing this bill as long as he continues to get a positive response from law enforcement representatives.
Mr. Shahab, in closing.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming out today, and I especially want to thank Ms. Saldana, Assemblywoman Saldana. I don't want to be yelled at over here. I just want to, she didn't bring a bulletproof vest like she wore to the Public Safety Committee in the Assembly, which, is a little bit of a relief, but I did notice that when she got here, she has a little bit of a security detail surrounding her. As a normal, law-abiding citizen, I don't have a security detail that follows me where I go places. If I ever get put in jeopardy, I have to rely on myself and the people in the immediate vicinity. Even if I do place a call to law enforcement, especially with the budget cuts that are going on these days, I don't know how long it's going to take until the law enforcement shows up. God forbid, I might be dead by the time they do. So it must be nice to live in your wonderful fantasy land, but out here, the normal people, we have to rely on ourselves and reality and having tools available to defend ourselves.
Ms. Arnson, in closing.
I think that there's been comments about, the paranoia starts to bubble up about you're trying to ban guns, you're trying to ban our guns, why don't you just take away all guns? Well, nobody's trying to ban cigarettes, but cigarettes are regulated. Your car is well regulated. Many things in society are regulated to keep the community safe. I just want to go back to the accountability issue. If we look at this philosophically, to get a perspective, what the investment that we put in law enforcement, what we make them go through to have the right to carry a lethal weapon in society, what they have to go through to get hired. We have a standard that's way up here. And we do that just to make sure that they get it right. The BART shooting is an example of the consequences on this.
All right, Ms. Arnson. And Mr. Chang, very briefly, in closing.
The latest Brady campaign report card, released on February 28, 2010, basically compared two states, California against Utah. California got the highest score, 79, and Utah got the lowest grade ever, 0. Okay? But if you take a look at the FBI's UCR report, it would very clearly establish that the violent crime rate in California is 503.8 per 100,000, and in Utah it's less than half of that, 221.8 per 100,000. It goes to show you that more gun control does not mean less crime.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists. Chang, Press Secretary for the Responsible Citizens of California. Karen Arnson, California Chapter Services Coordinator for the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Adnan Shahab, Republican candidate for State Assembly and Open Carry Advocate. And Assemblywoman Saldana, author of Assembly Bill 1934. We also thank our audiences here and on radio, television, and the internet. I'm Josh Richmond, Politics and Legal Affairs